So, The Boys, the show that in 2019 felt like a lightning bolt, a cultural reset. Remember that? Marvel was at its absolute peak. Endgame had just made $3 billion at the box office, Disney Plus was launching, and the superhero industrial complex felt utterly unassailable. And then here comes this nasty, R-rated Amazon Prime series about corporate superheroes who are, without exception, complete bastards. It was smart, it was angry, it had something to say about power, celebrity, corporate control, and the American psyche. Fast forward to May 2026, we're one episode away from the series finale, and the penultimate episode just became the lowest rated episode in the show's entire history on IMDb, a 7.0, which for this show is practically a death sentence. Something went very, very wrong. And it's not just the writing got bad, it's deeper than that. It's about what happens when a show that was built to puncture a genre becomes the thing it was satirizing. When a series about corporate superhero decay starts to decay itself. So let's talk about it. And first, let's establish the stakes here, because The Boys isn't some niche cult show. This is, or was, one of the biggest streaming properties on the planet. When Season 5 premiered on April 8th, 2019, it became Amazon Prime Video's most watched title worldwide within its first day. Nielsen data had it pulling 899 million minutes of viewing in its opening week. It won Emmys, it spawned an entire universe. Gen V, the animated Diabolical, the upcoming prequel Vought Rising with Jensen Ackles and Aya Cash, and The Boys Mexico with Diego Luna and Gael Garcia Bernal, who are attached as producers. This is Amazon's Game of Thrones, not in terms of budget. Kripke himself admitted they don't have Game of Thrones money, which is wild when you consider Amazon spent $1 billion on the Rings of Power. But in terms of franchise value, cultural footprint, and the sheer gravitational pull it exerts on the streaming landscape. And here's the thing. When The Boys started, the superhero genre was ascendant. Now, we're in the middle of what people are calling Marvel fatigue. So The Boys should be thriving in this environment. It should be the show that says, "We told you so," as the MCU collapses under its own weight. Instead, it's limping across the finish line. Now let's talk about money, because this is where it gets confusing. Season 5 reportedly cost $11.9 million per episode. That's Stranger Things money. That's House of the Dragon money. And yet, Eric Kripke is out here saying they can't afford fall battle scenes because they don't have Game of Thrones budget. So where is the money going? Because what we're seeing on screen doesn't look like $12 million an episode. What we're seeing looks like a show that filmed during COVID restrictions, even though Season 3 actually did film during COVID restrictions and looks significantly more expensive. Right now, when you watch The Boys, the sets feel like sets. The world feels like a soundstage. Every scene is 2 or 3 people in a small room, cutting to another 2 or 3 people in another small room. There's no establishing shots, no sense of geography, no sense that this is a country under fascist occupation. In other words, you don't feel that the show is big, or there's this epic scope that you used to feel in Season 1. Homelander has supposedly taken over the United States. He's dissolved the government, opened freedom camps, and is hunting dissidents. And yet the show feels smaller than it did when the stakes were, Vought is a shady corporation. We don't see the streets. We don't see ordinary people reacting to living under a literal supervillain dictatorship. There's no texture, no grit, no life. It feels like the writers told us Homelander won and expected that to be enough. Compare this to Season 2, where we got an entire subplot about Tommy Peterson, a regular guy radicalized by Stormfront's stochastic terrorism, who sees some convenience store clerk who didn't do anything, but he convinces himself this guy's a soup terrorist, and he murders him in cold blood. That was filler. Technically, it didn't advance the main plot, but it made the world real. It showed us how superhero propaganda actually functions in the lives of ordinary people. It had thematic weight. And now, we get Samuel L. Jackson voicing a hammerhead shark that tells the deep to fuck off, which, don't get me wrong, is funny. Sam Jackson cursing as a shark is inherently hilarious, but it's episode 7 of the final season. We're one episode from the end, and we're spending time on this? Or that scene where those 2 dog and cat people are sniffing each other's assholes. Like, that is something you could have maybe in your opening episode, but like, we're in the penultimate episode and they're spending time on jokes that go nowhere. That's been the whole show. I honestly thought that season 5 would be something else entirely. Yes, they could have some jokes and stuff, but I was really expecting this to be the stakes are up. The fact that we're in episode 7 and they still just have this dog and cat girl like sniffing each other, and then there's just some little fight. What are we doing here? And this brings me to maybe the most egregious example of the show's complete structural collapse, Sister Sage. And let's talk about what a massive swing this was. You introduced the literal smartest person on Earth in the second to last season of your show. That's a bold move. In a show about power, physical power, corporate power, sexual power, political power, Sage represented intellectual power, a grounded human soup whose weapon was her mind, not her fists. She was supposed to be the counterweight to Homelander's brute force tyranny, the person who could actually outthink the chaos. And for a minute, it worked. She was manipulating Homelander, running Vought from the shadows, playing a game 3 moves ahead of everyone. She was the show's attempt to say, okay, we've established that physical power corrupts absolutely, but what about intellectual superiority? What happens when the smartest person in the room decides the world needs to be managed by force? This is rich thematic territory. That's Watchmen territory. Speaking of which, Watchmen did this all better. Damon Lindelof's 2019 series took the graphic novel's transgressive mix of sex, violence, and political satire and actually earned it. Dr. Manhattan's nudity wasn't gratuitous, it was alienation made flesh. The sexual violence in that show was horrifying, not titillating. When Watchmen went absurd, like with the Squid Rain, it was in service of cosmic dread and historical trauma. Every gross-out moment, every act of ultra-violence, every piece of sexual content served the same thesis: power in all forms dehumanizes. The boys used to understand this. The sexual humor in early seasons, like the Deep's Gills being sexually assaulted or the infamous Herogasm episode, was transgressive with purpose. It was showing us how power dynamics warp intimacy, how celebrity culture commodifies bodies, how the soup's sexual entitlement is just another expression of their impunity. But Sage, in the third to last episode of the entire series, she does a complete 180. After an entire season of being the mastermind, she just pivots. She starts discussing Love Island with Frenchie while Kamiko's getting radiation treatment. She goes from Machiavellian genius to what exactly? Comic relief? A sounding board? This is character assassination, and not the fun kind. If you're going to fundamentally alter a character's trajectory, you need time. You need scenes. You need psychological groundwork. You can't just flip the smartest person alive switch to chatty roommate because you need to fill space in a penultimate episode. Grace Mallory, the CIA figure from earlier seasons, worked because she had history, she had relationships, she had gravity with these characters. She represented institutional power colliding with vigilante chaos. Sage was supposed to be that for the soup side after Mallory wasn't on the show anymore. And instead, now she's been nerfed into irrelevance. And here's the thing, if the show insists on having these pointless plot threads, pretty much everything with the Deep, like we get it, he's comic relief, but there isn't this thematic idea that's been built up with him. He's just there as comic foil. Then there's the rock hard character arc that goes nowhere. She-Line and Dog Knot sniffing each other's asses in the background. Whatever the hell is happening with the Gen V kids hiding in the woods, I assume they're saving them for the final fight, which just shows you didn't even have to watch any of Gen V to see where the boys is building up. It makes it seem like it's going to have this big finale, but really, it's doing the Marvel thing where it's like, oh, hey, there's this other series, go check that out, and by the way, we're bringing the characters in. It just doesn't feel like there's any weight to it. The Boys loves its sexual comedy. It loves its gore. Fine, but if you're going to waste runtime on the Deep's desert relocation fantasies, then give Sage a real subplot. Give her a psychological break. Give her a crisis of confidence that takes episodes to resolve. Don't just forget she was the smartest person in the world because you need someone to make small talk while the radiation machine beeps. This is what I mean when I say the show has lost its discipline. Early Boys could cut from a man being liquefied by a speedster to a quiet moment of two characters connecting. And it worked because the tonal whiplash served the same thesis. The world is broken, and here's what that breaking does to people. Now, the tonal whiplash isn't serving anything. It's just chaos. Take the Seth Rogen episode one-shots where Rogen, Kumail Nanjiani, Will Forte, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and Craig Robinson all play fictionalized versions of themselves at Mr. Marathon's party. It's a super bad reunion dropped into the middle of a fascist takeover arc. It's a comedy bit, it's fun, but it's episode 5 of 8 in the final season, and we're doing celebrity cameo shenanigans while Homelander is literally dissolving American democracy. Then 2 episodes later, Frenchie dies, brutally, intimately. Homelander finds the hideout, Frenchie distracts him so Kimiko can escape, and Homelander fatally wounds him. He dies in Kimiko's arms, and it's well acted, it's emotionally effective. But the show hasn't earned that emotional beat because it's been undercutting its own gravity for the past 6 episodes with shark cameos and celebrity parties and Sage making small talk about reality TV. This isn't we're a dark comedy with dramatic elements. This is we have no idea what show we're making from scene to scene. And just to recap, the show's momentum is all over the place. In episode 7, the second to last episode of the entire season, Homelander kills the President of the United States. Which is great, but this should be the inciting incident of the entire season, or the finale of last season. This should happen in episode 1, sure, but then the show should escalate from there. Instead, we get, 7 episodes of the boys hiding in various rooms, occasionally getting captured, occasionally escaping while Homelander plans a theme park? In episode 6, Homelander finally gets V1, the original Compound V, and becomes immortal. There's a massive explosion in a field. The boys are hiding in bushes nearby watching. It's a huge cliffhanger. And then episode 7, we cut ahead an indeterminate amount of time. Everyone escaped. No explanation. Homelander's just doing stuff. Soldier Boy, who spent the season being built up as a major player, gives Homelander the V1, making his own son immortal because he's a quote-unquote boomer drug-addicted burnout, who trusts the people at the worst possible moments, and then Homelander immediately puts him back in stasis. So the V1 plot, the season-long MacGuffin chase, resolves with nothing changing, except Homelander is now unkillable, which we basically, had already assumed. And Soldier Boy, the most interesting addition to the show since Stormfront, is shelved for a spin-off. This is narrative malpractice. The penultimate episode of your series should be accelerating towards the finale, not spinning its wheels with Sage and Frenchie discussing Love Island while Kimiko gets radiation treatment. And here's where I want to bring in Invincible and Watchmen, because they're the perfect counterexamples. Same wheelhouse, R-rated superhero deconstruction. Amazon Prime did Invincible based on comics, but both know exactly what shows they are. Invincible has a clear protagonist with a clear arc. The world building is consistent. The stakes escalate logically. When something absurd happens, it's in service of character or theme, not just wouldn't it be funny if, what actually stings is this came out right around the same time as Watchmen. The Boys was very important. In 2019, it felt like the antidote to Marvel's sanitized corporate-friendly heroism. It said, what if superheroes were real, and real people with that much power would be absolute monsters? What if the military-industrial entertainment complex was just openly evil? What if the people we worship as gods were actually the worst of us? That was a vital question, and the show answered it with intelligence and moral horror. Now it's become the thing it mocked. It's a franchise. It's spin-offs and prequels and Mexico set expansions. It's content. Amazon will keep the universe alive because it pulls 1 billion viewing minutes. But the flagship show, the thing that made all of this possible, is ending not with a bang, but with a confused whimper. Kripke said he's a tiny bit terrified about landing the finale. He should be, because right now, The Boys is in danger of being remembered not as the show that killed the superhero genre's innocence, but as the show that proves streaming franchises eventually eat their own tails. So there's 1 episode left. Maybe they'll stick the landing. Maybe the finale will be so good that we all forgive the meandering. It happens. Breaking Bad's final season was flawless. The Shield stuck it. Even Game of Thrones, which The Boys keeps being unfavorably compared to, had the Winds of Winter, which is one of the greatest episodes of television ever made, right before the collapse. But here's the difference. Those shows earned their finales. They built to them with discipline and purpose. The Boys Season 5 feels like it was written by throwing darts at a board labeled shocking moments and celebrity cameos, and hoping the audience wouldn't notice there was no connective tissue. Well, we noticed. So anyway, that's my take. Drop yours in the comments. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. If you think I'm right, well, pour one out for what the show used to be. I'll see you guys next time.